carbon dioxide. Like many people, I have been bombarded with global warming claims over the past couple of decades. This got my attention, so I decided to investigate the claims of global warming for myself with an open mind. When I examined the claims made by the climate change advocates, it didn't stack up as I understood what they were saying. According to the consensus science point of view, anthropogenic carbon emissions are the principal drivers of quote-unquote dangerous climate change. The following is offered as proof of alleged global warming: an increase in accelerating melting of ice caps, which will lead to coastal flooding, the increasing acidity levels of oceans, and alleged increase in the occurrence of extreme weather events, and the threatening extinction of many species such as polar bears. These claims are at best highly contentious and at worst contradicted by the facts. Extreme weather events have decreased, not increased, according to Indira Gorklani in his book The Improving State of the World. Ice caps are not melting at an unprecedented rate. In actual fact, they're increased down at the Antarctic, which contains 80% of the world's fresh water, and polar bear numbers are increasing. Such arguments divert attention away from the simple fact that carbon dioxide of itself cannot drive climate change. This is because when you examine carbon dioxide itself, it becomes quite apparent that it lacks the capacity and it is not in sufficient quantity in the atmosphere to affect climate change. Before we look at carbon dioxide, let's be clear about three things. Firstly, no one denies that climate is changing. It has done so in the past, is continuing to do so today, and will continue to change far into the future. Secondly, carbon dioxide is a part of the climate mix and does have an impact on climate. It does, to a certain point, have a greenhouse effect which results in a warming of the planet. Otherwise, without this effect, life on this planet would not be possible. Thirdly, what then is the role of carbon dioxide, given that A, we agree that climate is changing, and B, that carbon dioxide is part of the climate mix? What is of concern to me is that carbon dioxide is commonly labelled a pollutant, which is not true. It is essential for all life on the planet, and to call it a pollutant is an oxymoron. We're constantly shown pictures of chimneys belching out lots of smoke, particularly water vapour from cooling towers at power stations. But this is water vapour, not carbon dioxide. And keep in mind a simple rule: if you can see it and smell it, it's not carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is presented as a major greenhouse gas, but is it? It is a greenhouse gas, that we are agreed on. Water vapour makes up 97% of all greenhouse gases. CO2 about 2.5%, the rest is methane and other gases. Water vapour is a very efficient greenhouse gas and is approximately 27 times more efficient at being a conductor of heat or trapping heat than CO2. Because of its atomic structure, most infrared radiation passes right through CO2 and escapes into space, whereas water vapour retains most of the heat. And because the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere varies, the life of CO2 in the atmosphere is 7 to 14 years, and not 100 years as claimed by the IPCC. This is due to the fact that carbon dioxide, being a heavy gas, falls to the ground where it's utilised by all living things to enhance life, and it's put to good use in that respect. Because CO2 is said to trap some heat and reflect this back to the Earth, this is called a positive feedback mechanism. Keeping in mind that CO2 can't transmit heat. Oxygen transmits the heat back to the surface of the Earth. And while it's true to say that CO2 has a positive feedback, it's also true that it has a negative feedback. That is to say, it also blocks some heat coming in from the sun. So its role basically is to regulate temperatures rather than to act as some sort of heating agent. Water vapour has a much greater impact on the climate than CO2. Water vapour, being responsible for 95% of the Earth's greenhouse effect, has the major influence on the climate. Now, keeping in mind that of every 85,800 particles, 3,400 is water vapour, and keep in mind it's much more efficient as a greenhouse gas than carbon. Carbon only comprises 33 molecules out of nearly 86,000 molecules. Of those 33, only one is anthropogenic in origin. Based on these figures, it's impossible for carbon dioxide to be the major greenhouse gas or to be the dominant influence on climate change. Dr. Ferenc Miskolsky, a Hungarian physicist, claims that excessive amounts of carbon dioxide do not increase global temperatures. Once CO2 reaches a critical point, in his case 50 parts per million by volume, its maximum impact on climate has been achieved. Once carbon levels rise above this critical limit, CO2's influence on the climate is logarithmic. That is, it will take huge amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to cause a very slight increase in temperatures. So there is what he is saying is there is a limit to the greenhouse effect, and once this limit has been reached, the critical limit, then adding further greenhouse gases does not make the planet any warmer. It also must be noted that the total amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere varies on an annual basis. This variation is based upon 2011 figures showed that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere varied from 370 to 390 parts per million. That is to say, there was a 5% variation in the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And most of that due to natural causes. The thing is that the human contribution to carbon dioxide is 1.7% of the total of carbon dioxide, okay? So given the fact that the variation is 5% and humanity is only 1.7% of the total, therefore how can it be a crucial factor in climate change when the natural variation itself is 5%, far greater than anything that we're putting into the atmosphere? In conclusion, let me say this. The science is far from done and dusted. There are now over 30,480 scientists who disagree with the IPCC's claims about carbon dioxide driving climate change. Now, of course, to come back to that is, oh, well, look, even if there is some disagreement over the role of carbon dioxide, shouldn't we be bringing in or applying the precautionary principle, give the planet the benefit of the doubt, and try and cut off global warming at the pass? Well, as Bjorn Lomborg and others have pointed out, you've got to do your risk-cost analysis, and it's clearly been done by those who have crunched the numbers that spending money to try and reduce carbon dioxide emissions is virtually a futile exercise. It won't stop climate change. What will happen is we'll spend vast amounts of money on achieving virtually immeasurable impact on climate. It would be far better to wait to see if and when disasters happen and addressing specific instances of climate impacts when they occur. Humanity must stop and rethink its stance on carbon dioxide. Instead of governments around the world being fixated with reducing our carbon footprint by squandering millions on carbon abatement and renewable energy, it would be more prudent if everyone did their homework first. We need to get the science right before trashing the global economy and throwing millions out of work, and also reducing our standard of living. After all, isn't that what the precautionary principle says to do?